Started the slideshow. It's fine.
Yes, sir. No, it's not still slide show, sir.
No, it is full screen here.
We haven't received a full screen. Only it's still the small screen for us, sir.
1 second. Now,
Small screen, sir. Could you maximize the screen?
no, it is coming full screen only. I think that option which you showed me, no, I may have to change there something. Shall I go back to Google Meet and change my
Oh, it's
to
one
entire screen?
1 second. Sir, on your right, on your screen, sir, the slideshow button is there. Can you just click on that, sir, once? On the right hand side corner button.
1 second. Now I will stop the sharing and again go back to sharing.
Yes, sir.
I will put entire screen then.
Entire screen, yes, sir. Can you put the entire screen? Yeah.
So now,
Nothing is seen here.
is it coming?
Oh, sir.
Huh?
Oh, sir, not yet. Not coming on the screen.
Ah, now,
Oh, yes, sir, but full screen
how,
isn't.
how about now?
Okay, sir, this is, yeah, this is decent. Fine, sir. Coming now. Yeah.
No, full screen it is coming.
It is still not full screen, but it is three-fourth the screen.
Because in that I have put as share full screen. Could it be due to the laptop issue?
Okay. I'm just seeing.
I'll just check if I can do it on another laptop. Just give me a second.
Could you select the full screen option there? When you have that full screen option above, there only, sir. Just change layout. No, no,
Uh,
not there.
1 second. See, entire screen is there, window is there, tab is there. Best for video and animation.
In the right hand side below, when you pressed present now, no, sir.
Huh.
Present that, there was full screen option.
Huh. Your entire screen option is there.
Yeah, can you just click on that, sir, once?
I clicked on and now
So you'll have to open your PowerPoint.
it's already open.
It's like minimized, yeah. Now
Huh.
there, sir,
Now,
can you maximize? It's okay,
now it
sir.
is now
Okay.
it is full screen.
Yes, sir.
Is there any other option other than that?
No, sir, just that. There only.
Huh.
That's
Now
okay,
it
sir.
is. Is it okay?
Yes, sir, this is okay.
So I'll just go to laser pointer. You are able to see.
Yes, sir. Able to see.
Okay. How about there any other option here? Voice, no issue, no?
No issue, sir. Voice is clear. We'll just 10 minutes, sir, until all the people join in. Then we will start the session.
no issues.
Thank you, sir.
ಹೇಳಿ ಸಿಸ್ಟರ್, ಏನಾಯ್ತು? ಇವಾಗ ಟಾಪ್ ಕೊಡ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದೀನಿ ಫ್ರೀ ಇಲ್ಲ, ಆಮೇಲೆ ಮಾತಾಡ್ತೀನಿ.
Now you can talk.
Dr. Chavan sir, Dr. Soumyaji here. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, sir.
How are you, sir?
Yeah, I'm fine, sir.
Nice to see you again after a small brief visit what we had in our chamber 2 months ago.
Correct, sir. Correct, sir.
We will start in couple of minutes, sir.
No issues, sir. No issues.
Vijay Kumar sir is in Bangalore only today.
Oh, is it weekend? No. So,
Dr. Purushottam,
yeah. Good afternoon, madam.
good afternoon. How will you be taking the questions at the end? I am
Yeah,
one
yeah.
of the moderators.
Okay. No issues, madam.
You're taking the questions at the end?
Yeah,
Is
yeah.
that
We will
okay?
take it.
Okay.
As the people want, if they want something to be clarified there only, we have time. So we
Okay,
can
fine. So
pause and take it
let
up.
them send a message, I think,
Yeah,
isn't it?
yeah, yeah.
Or raise the hand or send a message.
You can put the message, your question in the chat box. We shall ask
Okay.
her at the end of the session. The question. Thank you.
Dr. Suja, good afternoon. Gangadhar here.
Dr. Gangadhar, good afternoon.
Suddenly I couldn't recognize because some Anjali Augustine is coming in your.
Yeah. That's my daughter's Gmail ID, I think.
Who else has to join?
Dr. Vinay is
Yeah, I saw him. His name I saw somewhere that time.
Vinay sir joined.
You just confirm what is. Dr. Vinay?
Good afternoon, sir. I'm here.
Good afternoon, Vinay. How are you?
Very fine, sir. How are you?
Yeah, good, good. Shall we start?
Yes, yes. I think we can start. Good afternoon, ma'am.
Good afternoon, good afternoon.
Purushottam sir, can we start?
Okay, sir.
I'll just request the moderators to take over, and this is actually just a preamble. In fact, this is the third in the series of webinars what we are planning over a couple of months, like March and April. To begin with, we had a lecture from Dr. Nanjundappa, followed by Bharati, and this is the third lecture we are having. In fact, the aim is to cover different aspects of head and neck malignancies. And I'm sure this is going to be of great benefit for all the postgraduate students and even consultants as well. I request our MCs to begin the session. Dr. Mubina and Dr. Harsh, please.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the third session on Head and Neck 2021 webinar series. Today's talk is on the surgical management of paranasal sinus tumors by Dr. Purushottam Chavan. It is my pleasure to introduce Dr. Purushottam Chavan. He is a senior consultant at Kidwai Memorial Cancer Institute. He has completed his MS-ENT in AIIMS Delhi and his MCH in head and neck surgery. He is currently an associate professor in the Department of Head and Neck Oncosurgery at the Kidwai Memorial Cancer Institute. We welcome you, sir. The moderators for today's session are Dr. Suja Sridharan, Professor, Department of ENT, KMC Mangalore. We welcome you, ma'am. And Dr. Vinay V. Rao, Associate Professor, Department of ENT, Father Muller's Medical College. So we'll start the session now. In case anybody has any question, please post it in the chat box. Over to you, sir. Dr. Suja ma'am.
Yes. Yes, Dr. Mobina.
Ma'am, you can take over the session, ma'am. Sir will be presenting.
So, Dr. Purushottam, we welcome you and you can proceed. We are eagerly awaiting to hear you.
Thank you, Dr. Suja and Dr. Vinay and entire team at NFI University, especially to the Vice Chancellor for allowing me this opportunity to present my views about management of maxillary sinus tumors. So this is my presentation will cover the different subsets of maxillary lesions and how the things we have worked on giving the optimal outcome for the patients. So I think the screen has starts sharing the screen. Is it fine now? Screen is being shared.
Yes, we can see very well.
Okay, so just a brief thing about the anatomy of the paranasal sinuses. We can see that there are nearly 7 bones. 4 of them are paired sinuses, turbinates and meatai. All of them are in very close compact. And because of that, what happens, the anatomy is technically shrunken here. And if you look into each sinus has got its own significance, like maximum malignancies are from the maxillary sinus, then it is nasal cavity, then ethmoid, and most of them are overlapping. There is no classical one subset from which the disease will come. As the disease progresses up, as the stage increases, many of these bones and sinuses are overlapped. Not only that, the other thing what we see in maxillary sinuses, it is not like larynx or hypopharynx where 90% of the cases are squamous cell carcinomas. Here we end up seeing a lot of diseases which range from adenoid cystic carcinoma to adenoid cystic carcinoma, adenocarcinoma, esthesioneuroblastoma, melanoma, you name a disease and it has a presence in maxillary sinus, paranasal sinuses. The other thing which is of importance is many of them present in stage 3 and stage 4 and very few cases present in T1 and T2. So the reason for that is, if you go into this list by WHO, you name a malignancy, it can be found in maxillary sinus. So because of all these factors, what happens is, this becomes the most challenging problem in head and neck cancer because many of these cancers are rare with vast histological diversity, and individual nature and histories render statistical analysis becomes difficult because when you are talking about different malignancies in the same site, each will have its own way of management. So you will not have a group of same malignancies at the same stage to compare and tell which treatment will be best for these patients. So this complex anatomy and close proximity of the orbit, skull base, eye, all these things make the treatment much more, again, complex. So rarity of the disease, histological diversity, complex anatomy, close proximity of vital structures, all of these things make maxillary sinus treatment management a very complex and dicey situation. And the patient presents late because of innocuous symptoms. So initially patient thinks it could be sinusitis, it goes to local doctors, they also think it is sinusitis or some recurrent allergy and all those things. So Before it becomes too obvious, everybody ends up wasting their time. So often it is ignored by the patient or by the treating physician. So more often you end up seeing these patients when they are in an advanced stage. So invasion of important structures would have already happened. Now you are in a tricky situation, how to go about and how to manage, because that will impact the quality of life if we end up removing, like removal of the eye, or if it is going near the skull base, then whether it is operable, not operable, orbital apex. So many things will come into picture as the case presents in a late stage. The complex anatomy and close proximity of the orbit and skull base and all these things can impact the oncological resections. So it is a bony thing. So it is very difficult to make out sometimes on radiology, or you might have done a radiology and by the time you are operating, the disease might have progressed. So all of them may even impact the oncological resection, making it difficult for any one person or institution to accrue a large number of cases and results to say that we have done so many cases with this treatment and this is what the result. Because even if you take an institution, the variety of cases they end up seeing leads to they will have examples of 1 or 2 for each malignancy, each type of malignancy, each stage of malignancy. That leads to say whether the treatment was right or wrong, or whether the outcome was acceptable or not acceptable, becomes difficult to compare with anybody else. So it also makes the expertise in the management difficult to handle. But what positive thing what we are seeing after 1970, most of my ENT colleagues will agree with that, with this Mesclinger and Wigand coming into picture with endoscopic approach and improvement in rhinological treatment has expanded with the help of improvement in radiology and endoscopy. So imaging advances like fine CT scans in axial, coronal and sagittal views, then image guided surgery with embolization facility, endoscopy facility and reconstructive facility. These what have happened in last 30 years have made the treatment or these complex procedures with increased safety, what we can say in current era, we have been able to manage these malignancies with much more increased safety compared to what it used to happen in the past. So everybody agrees functional endoscopic sinus surgery has become primary approach in most of the rhinological cases, to some extent in malignancies also of the paranasal sinuses. But time-honored external approach has been the gold standard now also and in the past also. So precise understanding of anatomy and familiarity with both approaches and reconstructive facilities is what ensures optimal patient outcome even in the current era. So we all know indications of endoscopic sinus surgery. This is a list what I have done, and this list can keep increasing depending upon the knowledge and expertise available, and people have dared to increase this horizon with the availability of endoscopic sinus surgery. So the factors to be kept in mind in management of these malignancies is, as I told, there can be just brain above, then eye, and this side other sinuses, lower down teeth, anteriorly the facial skin. So you need to know these tumors in all 6 dimensions: superior, inferior, anterior, posterior. So this is possible only with cross-sectional radiology, because you cannot feel for the tumor and you cannot just go and explore and then decide the extent of the disease. So that is where the radiological picture comes into picture. You need a sagittal view, which will give anteroposterior extension. You get coronal view, which can also give side-to-side extension and upper extension. And axial view, again, will tell you anteroposterior extension. So all these four cuts become very important when we are trying to analyze a paranasal sinus malignancy to understand its extension and type of resection. So for example, just have a look on this lady. This lady says it's very difficult to say what is its superior extension, medial extension just by seeing the clinical photograph. The moment we add a cross-sectional radiology, and now we can very easily make out that the skull base is not involved, it is just touching the eye. Probably we have to remove the eye because it is going in this area into the orbit. So anterior posterior extension, side extension. So no paranasal sinuses can be addressed without radiological evaluation. So radiological extent and histopathology is what is very important to address the paranasal sinus tumors. So now coming back to our goals of surgery, because we are doing oncological surgery in paranasal sinuses, the functional endoscopic sinus surgery type of concept doesn't come here. Here the main goal is complete tumor resection, followed by preserve the normal tissues and function. So first goal is to remove the tumor. Second is am I audible?
Yes,
Am I
sir.
audible? It's fine. Huh? I was getting a call, so I thought, okay, complete tumor resection, preservation of normal tissue and function, and limit the morbidity. When it comes to morbidity in paranasal sinuses, it is both functional as well as cosmetic. We'll cover as we go on to examples. So now comes when you end up seeing a malignancy of paranasal sinuses, you need to see two aspects for it. One is surgical approach. So whether it is endoscopic, transpalatal, palatal, transnasal, midfacial deglowing, lateral rhinotomy, combined craniofacial resection. These are the axis or approach related issues we have to see into based upon where the lesion is. Then the second is extent of resection. So one is for axis and one is extent of resection. So when it comes to extent of resection, depending upon where the tumor is, you can do medial maxillectomy, you can do infrastructure maxillectomy, total maxillectomy, radical maxillectomy, or craniofacial resection. So a difficult approach to primary tumor and limited surgical exposure could prevent surgeon from determining the adequate surgical margin. So this surgical approach and extent of resection have to be planned before surgery by keeping in mind the extent of the tumor and difficulties, like endoscopic may not be able to reach lateral aspect, medial maxillectomy will not cover the lateral wall if needs to be covered, you need to do total maxillectomy. For total maxillectomy, you may need midfacial deglowing or lateral rhinotomy approach. So you have to have the advantage and disadvantages of the surgical approaches to look into what extent of resection is required. So some of these incisions, many of my colleagues will be familiar. What we need to know is, as we told, in the last 30 years, tremendous expansion of rhinological field has occurred, but these incisions which have been shown in the textbooks are still practiced, but they were meant at a time when our radiological features, endoscopic facilities, reconstructive facilities were not there. So if you look into these are the easy way, go in and remove the tumor and come back, and may have their own side effects in the form of cosmetic and functional outcomes. So the management I am going to take you through is some of the things which are different than what we have faced with these routine incisions. For example, see this one maxillectomy which has been done with Weber-Ferguson incision and tried to rehabilitate when prosthesis. As the patient lived longer, there is a contracture and trismus. He is a young fellow. Now his facial expression and function both have been compromised even though he is disease free. Now he is realizing the difficulties of functional and aesthetic outcomes. he is no longer afraid because he has already survived more than 2 years post total maxillectomy. So these kind of issues flare up after the patient comes out of the fear that initially they accept the treatment because of the fear of cancer related morbidity or mortality. So what I wanted to tell is, when we try to treat, if we just keep in mind the oncological aspects and not the aesthetic and functional aspect, we realize it later in life when patient comes back and presents the way the previous patient presented. So what we have been what I'm trying to show here is, we all talked about identity through fingerprint, but actual identity is this. All of us have got unique identity. All of us are recognized by our face. So it is not the fingerprint, it is the face which is a identity for any individual, whether it is a poor or rich or either of the sex, young or old. So we have to keep in mind when we are addressing paranasal sinus tumors, the patient's identity is at stake. Whatever scar or functional disfigurement we are causing on the face will impact the patient on his social life. So for example, again, some of the cases in which these cases were operated with without reconstruction or with soft tissue reconstruction. You can make out there is a appearance problem, there is a speech problem, there is a chewing, swallowing problem and chewing problem. All of them compromise the quality of life. So over a period of a year or two, patient starts appreciating the quality of life issues as he starts living longer and becomes depressed and starts running around for improvement of these functions, which has to be kept in mind when we are treating these paranasal sinus malignancies. Even when we have done an extensive surgery and repaired them with a soft tissue flap like rectus in this case, few years down the line, you can see how the rectus has got atrophied and it just looks like some radial forearm flap might have been put for a total maxillectomy and segmental mandibulectomy. So these are the issues of long-term survival due to the good quality of treatment outcomes. But what we are seeing later in life is these function-related and cosmetic-related issues. So again, you can see here, what you see is, even though they are disease-free, you will end up seeing pain in their eyes and worry in their eyes because of these dysfunction issues. So keeping these factors in mind, we'll go back and address the malignancies and see how it impacts. If a lesion is very small, only on the palate, this can be very well addressed in the current scenario with transoral excision. If the lesion is little big, I'm taking you through some approaches which are non-conventional. So this can be addressed with a lower cheek flap. For example, here you can see we have used the transoral approach and the lower cheek has been lifted up to the inferior alveolar foramina and the whole axis has been up. You can make out the visibility of the tumor on the palate and it could be excised. Because of the radiological evaluation and good surgical saws, this was excised without giving any scar over the face. Similar way, this is a fibrous disease in a young girl was completely excised with lower cheek flap. Because it needed a reconstruction and anyway you have to go to the neck, the same incision was used for complete. You can see the disease is going up to the posterior wall of the maxilla and above, in fact, it is pushing the orbit up. Even then, this could be managed with only lower cheek flap and not the conventional maxillectomy approaches. So we can also use mandibulotomy approach, wherein which whole of the up to nasopharynx can be visualized, and you can see again another case of mandibulotomy. So this is another example wherein which bilateral maxillectomy has been done. You can see the rise tube here, you can see the other side maxillary sinus, here you can see the whole maxilla has been removed. This is a soft palate, this is the tongue, part of the segment of the mandible and the MRND with preservation of the IJV. So MRND segmental mandibulectomy, bilateral maxillectomy with infratemporal fossa clearance could be achieved only with a lower cheek flap, and whole of the upper lip and the cheek is intact. And you can see the specimen which has come as in toto, maxilla with segment of the mandible and neck dissection. And this is the lesion over the palate which was extending into maxilla, and this is side, it is the mandible. Again, you can see here, even if the disease is located in the posterior, here you can see pterygoid plates, the lesion is in the soft palate, this is the mandible, paramandibular space, and base of tongue lesion going to tonsil, going up into soft palate and pterygoid plate where it requires posterior base tongue resection, mandible and posterior maxillectomy to clear the infratemporal fossa extension. So you can see here, it also has been addressed with lower cheek flap only. So neck dissection has been done, segment of the mandible removed, tongue, base tongue has been removed. This is a soft palate, Rell's tube. This is the posterior pharyngeal wall, and this is the posterior part of the maxilla has been addressed. All of them in the same neck incision. Another case where you can see the lesion is in the base tongue going to the soft palate and posterior pharyngeal wall. Even in this case, you could go with a cheek flap, and you can see the nasopharynx being cleared here, and posterior part of the pterygoid and last molar being removed. Along with that, this is the epiglottis, this is the hyoid. So up to this extension is also possible through the same lower cheek flap and repaired with a soft tissue reconstruction. So this is specimen and the outcome. So what I wanted is, without giving any scar over the face, these can be addressed with only with lower cheek flap. So if we try to see, this lady came to us after roaming around many of the places from more or less northeast. This lesion appeared as if it is a maxillary sinus lesion, but when we saw the CT scan, it was the aneurysmal bone cyst of the maxilla going to infratemporal, mandible going to infratemporal fossa. This is a coronoid process which is expanding. And this lady didn't wanted any scar over the face. Such a big lesion needs to be addressed, even though it is benign, and needs to be addressed without giving any scar over the face, and needed a cosmetic and functional outcome. Over the face, straightforward appears technically difficult, but you can make out. She underwent a free fibula here, and this is how her occlusion, and this is her post-op follow-up photograph. So without any scar over the face. She came back after 5 years to just meet us and say thank you. And so this is how you can make out. There is no scar over the face. This is the neck scar which we use, which is nearly merged with our neck creases. So if we try to think a little bit and spend some time over the radiological findings, we will be able to give them an approach which can be cosmetically and functionally good. Not that all cases require lower cheek flap only. A lesion like this, edentulous patient, could be just removed with just upper lip split. The whole bilateral maxilla has been removed here. You can see the soft palate, you can see the Rell's tube. It's been removed just with the upper lip split. So not that Weber-Ferguson I hate or anything like that, been used in selected few cases. This is a 9-year-old child with JNA. At the time, expertise for a 9-year-old child for an endoscopic approach for a sphenoid and infratemporal fossa extension was a bit difficult. So we decided on doing with a facial incision and try to approach it with a open approach. So after embolization, this is how the incision was given, and nasomaxillary swing was done, and this is a tumor which is removed in toto without any breach over it. And this is the film. You can see the opposite side maxillary sinus. This is the nasal septum. This is the soft palate. This is the teeth and maxilla being pushed laterally based on the cheek flap. This is the infratemporal fossa and nasal cavity. And meticulously with the mini plates being put there, it was closed. And this is how the fine suturing could give a result like this. The maxillary walls are intact, which are needed for a 9-year-old kid for development. And this is how few years down the line his facial appearance. So he came after nearly 5-6 years after his surgery. He was nearly 14-15. So what, even if you give a facial incision, a meticulous closure can give a good result if you preserve the bony architect wherever it is not involved. So we have Brown's classification helping us the way we have to remove the maxillary sinuses depending upon the disease. And there is also a reconstruction algorithm. So we'll go one by one what kind of reconstruction algorithms can be used and how it can impact the functional outcomes. So a lesion which is confined to only palate, so intra-arch palatectomy. You can see here intra-arch palatectomy. It was a post-chemotherapy patient, and we didn't want it too extensive work for him because of his chemotherapy status. So what we did, we just used a submental flap to cover up that defect because at that time we didn't have option for radial forearm flap. So either radial forearm or this submental took care. He received radiation so that whatever the beard grown here could be taken care. So we talked about the simple obturator reconstruction and what are the problems and benefits. The benefit is it is less time consuming, your surgery becomes very fast, offers immediate results which are acceptable. But as I showed you, as the things move on, the cavity becomes smaller and smaller, obturator may break down, you may have to remodel. It has to be cleaned every day, otherwise it will smell. Or it may happen that patient will develop some trismus in both these cases where the obturator couldn't be fit because a new obturator also couldn't be made because trismus is there, they cannot take an impression. So both of them are struggling with difficulty in having a new obturator and difficulty in speech and swallowing because the previous obturator was not fitting and new obturator was not provided to them because of the trismus. So these are the issues of obturator over a period of time, even though they give a good results and they are cheap and immediate acceptable results are seen. So this case, what we did because of the issues of trismus and this facial dysfunction, he underwent secondary reconstruction with a fibula, and this is what we could give him at a later stage. So this was not that easy as it is said. So this is a 3D reconstruction of the CT film which was converted into a 3D printed model. And we harvested a fibula and used it one for orbit and one for palatal defect. Because this model could be sterilized and used in the OT, we could precisely cut the fibula and fit here and keeping it intact the vascular pedicle. So the issues of ischemia were taken care and this could be nicely fitted into the defect. And once it was fitted, this is how it was reconstructed. So something better than what he had we could achieve with this kind of reconstruction. So this is secondary reconstruction. So you cannot do better than this. But if the patient gets, I will come to what if reconstruction is done in the upfront. So a malignant melanoma of the soft palate for a female patient, we did again transoral excision. And we use the same submental flap the way we use it in the male patient, but because he is a female patient and in melanoma you don't have to give radiation also. This is how the healing occurred. And this is how her facial aesthetics and functional things could be done with a simple submental flap. Few years down the line, this is her follow-up. So another male where he was adentulous, where processes couldn't be fitted. He was cardiac high risk, where we didn't have time to do any other reconstruction other than a small flap, because processes also was not. It's difficult to fit in adentulous patients. So we put him on a submental flap. You can see the beard growing there. But as he took radiation, all these hairs disappeared. And this is few years down the line when he came for a follow-up. The submental flap is become thinned out, but his Functional things are fine because anyway he was edentulous, and the beards, whatever were growing, were taken care by radiation. So this appeared as if it was a normal cavity. So you really don't need any, for all cases, you don't need a free flap only to get the optimal outcome with cosmetic outcomes. So you still can manage them with a small flaps if they are calculated and used. But as I said, in male patients, you have issue of hairs coming there if you use submental. So one case such was like this mucoepidermide, this was mucoepidermide low grade. So where excision was sufficient enough, again he was edentulous, he would have not received the RT. The issue came is what, because he is not going to receive the RT, and now if you put submental, he will have a problem. So what we did, we used temporalis muscle, and we could cover that with that muscle, and this is how it healed over a period of time. And he had a stepladder deformity here, which he could hide without our advice with a cap. He started putting a cap and started covering this. Otherwise, facial other functions were no scar and nothing over the face, and otherwise mouth opening and his food habits were all managed. So upfront free fibula for a mucoepidermal carcinoma in a young patient could be managed with a free fibula. You can make out how his facial aesthetics are maintained. But even this case started complaining of the small hairs of his fibula skin. So when we tried to address this issue, what we did for another case of a similar age where infrastructure maxillectomy was required for the malignancy, we used fibula without skin. We used the muscles of flexor hallucis longus and covered that area, and that got mucosalized, and we could use it for rehabilitation also. The issues of hair growth were taken care. And similar patient can be rehabilitated with dental implants also. So this is a case, what you are seeing here is a fibula being put, and now we have done a 3D print so that we can make out where to put the implants. So the temporary denture have been created matching with the normal dentures opposite side, and you can fine drill, you can see. Those gave us an idea where to drill and see how it fits. So this is another lady where we had used a fibula without skin, and then we could drill and put permanent implants there. And this is how the X-ray of that lady with implants being put there, and this is how it was rehabilitated. And this is a post-op where complete rehabilitation with fibula with implants being done. Again, you can make out that the excision is transoral and neck scar for anastomosis, and nothing over the face. So this appears simple, but not that so. That is why one of the head and neck journal has put the article published by Amrita people into their front page about the maxilla being reconstructed with fibula. So some more examples, extensive diseases you may not be able to do with fibula, but if you try to put some temporalis fascia or try to rehabilitate them, prosthesis doesn't work. You can see here it is a total maxillectomy with orbital exoneration, temporalis being pushed here. It has not served any purpose. Patient has got trismus, and you can see there is a crusting. So if the same patient, if undergoes a simple flap like ALT or rectus, which covers the eye as well as the maxilla, this is what you can get for a vortex. Agreed, if you use long, it may also atrophy like what we showed in the past. But it's a too big a defect to be managed with a free fibula, so better to put soft tissue flaps if the patient is more so edentulous. So somewhere like this, where in which only the suprastructure maxilla is involved, but eye is also normal and palate is also normal, only that excision can be done with a free flap so that function of the eye as well as the palate can be saved. A orbital mass extending to maxilla can be addressed without going down. You can give an incision all around and excise it and reconstruct it with a free flap. If the disease is involving both side maxilla and ethmoid, they can also be addressed with a bicoronal incisions so that the facial relatively it can be taken care, but anyway you may have to put a free flap there. So these are some of the cases where we have used infra trans conjunctival incision and transoral incision to address the maxillectomy and reconstruct with fibula. So the case where we just split the upper lip was reconstructed with a ALT flap. The other case where I showed you bilateral maxillectomy and the neck dissection was reconstructed with a rectus. So the another case was a young fellow with a cheek going to maxilla and complete mandible was underdeveloped. So you can see the extensive defect. Again, none of them will fit into the classical incisions for the maxilla. So this was handled with fibula, and we didn't wanted to put PMMC because he's a young guy and his shoulder function was important. So we used transverse capillary flap. You can see the fibula being put there for inner lining and outer lining covered with transverse capillary flap. So, and this is his dental rehabilitation with implants. And this is how it was few years down the line. But he came back just a few months back and requested the hollowness here needs to be corrected, and we did ALT for that to give a fullness. So this is the kind of demand patient keeps on adding as you keep on responding to their needs and as they live longer. So some of the other cases where maxilla buccal mucosa is involved in the retromolar trigone area with skin being puckered here, again cannot fit into any of the classical maxillectomy incisions and can be managed with the way the defect and reconstruction is required. So the idea is keep your options open. So here post RT case with trismus and retromolar trigone area disease going up to infratemporal fossa. We didn't wanted to give a incision over the face. At the same time, we wanted to address it. So what we did was pre-tracheal incision was given, and the whole maxilla, temporalis muscle, and posterior maxilla were removed. And this is how it is, and it was reconstructed with the ALT. You can see how it is. It's been put there, and it is his follow-up. And 5 years down the line, you can see how he is and his flap. So if nice work is done, the most of the cosmetic and functional things can be taken care. So what I wanted to tell about giving these examples is, it reminded me of this article which came in National Geographic 2 years back, that most often in oncology what is forgotten is cosmetic and functional outcomes, but it is very important. This is what the face of a girl who received a complete face transplant in 2018, I think, and she received her face from this lady. And what it shows is such a young girl had this kind of face due to whatever trauma and technically rehabilitated, but was not acceptable to her. Finally, she underwent face transplant. Similar way, another case in the same year who was nearly 69-year-old underwent a face transplant. So what these two cases show us is face is face irrespective of the age of the patient and sex of the patient. Everybody wants their identity to be retained. So this factor has to be kept in mind while addressing the paranasal sinuses. So if the aim is mere separation of the oro and antral and nasal cavities, then soft tissue flaps like temporalis, submental, radial forearm, anything can work. But you become more ambitious in the objectives, like you want to put implants, don't want to give any scar over the face. It becomes more complex technically to achieve the rehabilitative process. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for an interesting talk. I would now ask Dr. Suja ma'am and Dr. Vinay sir if have any questions.
Hello.
Yeah, tell me, ma'am.
Are there any questions? Any of the Anyone listening to Dr. Chauhan's talk? Would you like to ask him some questions? I am not able to see.
I think nobody has written anything. I think it was.
Dr. Prahlad has written, can you show the slide of different classes of defects? I think it's that Brown's classification. Huh?
Yeah, you want that to be seen again?
I think so. That's what Dr. Prahlad has written. Can you show the slide of different classes of defects again?
Yeah, they can be seen on Google. I just try to run over them because I wanted to show what is not usually thought over. So anyway, I will go through. These are the maxillectomy defects, and Brown's classification is somewhere. This is a Brown's classification. So there is no point in talking over something which is already there in the books. So I went little up faster here to cover up the other issues.
Perhaps Dr. Chauhan, you can just explain this again.
Yeah, the Brown has classified. You don't treat like thyroidectomy, total thyroidectomy and hemi. Here, what has been done here is, if you're just doing alveolectomy, it becomes class 1. If it is little bit alveolectomy and if the defect goes into the maxillary sinus, it becomes 2. If the defect goes into the floor of the orbit, if you are removing the floor of the orbit, then it becomes type 3. And if it goes to medial wall of the orbit, if it becomes your defect becomes maxillectomy and complete floor removal, then it becomes 4. And if you are removing orbital exentration and upper structures of the maxilla, it is 5. And then I showed examples for 5 and 6 also. If it is ethmoid and bilateral medial walls of the maxilla, if you remove, they become 6. And then related to palate, they have divided into A, B, C, D, wherein which I gave an example for only intra-arch palate. And if one side of the palate is removed with the hard teeth, it is B. If it is anterior 1/3 of the palate, then it is C. And if it is more than that, then it is a D. So I gave you an example also of bilateral maxillectomy where complete palate was removed. I gave one example for type A defect, and type B defect also I showed. So technically not possible to show all defects. So I just went through some of the unusual cases to cover up.
And Dr. Chauhan, can I ask you a question? So
Yeah, please.
You had shown one patient who was reconstructed, a secondary reconstruction was done.
Yeah.
So you used a was I right in assuming that you used temporalis muscle for that?
No, that secondary reconstruction was a free fibula.
Something else, isn't it?
I showed you one temporalis also, wherein which it was, this is the case mucoepidermide.
Okay.
And that patient was a low-grade mucoepidermide carcinoma. So we didn't wanted to irradiate him. And he was edentulous patient. So what we did in his case is we used temporalis. Due to, I didn't show you in detail because the aim was to show the feasibility rather than all practical cases.
Yes, I understood. But Dr. Chauhan, this patient, of course, you did secondary reconstruction. But what do you
this
say
was
about,
the case.
Yeah.
This is the temporalis which is mucosalized, madam. So this is the disease and this is the post-op.
Yes.
Tell me, madam.
This complete reconstruction of the maxillary sinus defect with flaps, is there any issue in that primary reconstruction?
Primary, it is affordability, madam. The duration of surgery goes beyond 10 hours and affordability goes up. It needs to be done with a team and it's not feasible on a day-to-day basis.
Okay.
And to put a design, see, I call maxillary defect is like putting a drawer in the table. If a 2 millimeter cut maxillary fibula is cut more, then it will hang in the air. If it is cut less, then it will not fit there. So you need to be that really good carpenter to cut this and measure the defect in millimeter by millimeter and put it. So it is not that easy said and done, but the idea is to show that if we start doing more and more, then we'll be able to learn the things and we'll be able to manage.
Thank
So
you.
that is why the 3D printed model I showed, no, this film.
Yes.
You can make out this fibula has been chopped and it was measured on the defect. Usually what people do is when this 3D printing facility was not available, they used to go to the primary defect, measure it, come back, cut it, then again, and if you detach the vascular pedicle, then what happens? Your ischemia time sets in. So you have to complete the anastomosis within 2.5 to 3 hours. So that kind of stress will also be there, and the length also becomes short. The fibula has got a 25 centimeter bone, but more bone you use, less vessel length is left because it has to be brought down from maxilla to neck for anastomosis. When we do it for mandible, what happens? The vessels are there only. So you hardly need 4 to 5 centimeter length sufficient enough for anastomosis. But when it comes to maxilla, you need really long length. So more length you need, then less bone is available. So these are the issues.
When we are doing primary reconstruction like this, is there a problem that recurrences are not so easily visible?
It is a very nice question, madam. But the issue is what happens. So even if you notice a recurrence after maxillectomy, there is nothing we can do. I have not come across anybody saying once you are done total maxillectomy, there is a recurrence in the infratemporal fossa.
You can go back.
You will say goodbye to him, because that is the technically inoperable area where it would have come. So in the process, what we are denying is the quality of life which patient would have got because of the reconstruction. For example, you saw that one ward guy where we had put ALT for maxilla with orbital exenteration. He's nearly 60, 65. Even if this guy recurs, what am I going to do? And he is edentulous. So this flap will take care of for 3 to 4 years. Even if it, say for example, I am a bad surgeon and left disease somewhere in the orbital apex area. That area, even if you detect radiologically or clinically, without reconstruction, you can detect it clinically. With reconstruction, you can detect it with PET scan or CT scan. In both the cases, you will not address it. So let the patient have good quality of life as long as he is there. And reconstruction improves I showed you this and this without free flap, same orbital exenteration and maxillectomy. See the facial expression versus see the facial expression. It is just after the radiation. Still, you can see the radiation induced darkness over the face. So these are the things. If the patient starts accepting that, if he gets a good quality of life, he forgets the cancer faster.
Dr. Chava, and there is a question from Dr. Bala. When do you consider maxillary malignancy to be inoperable?
It depends upon people to people, madam. Usually what I think is orbital apex is one, infratemporal fossa, if the great vessels and high infratemporal fossa involvement is there, then usually they are the bad cases. Anteriorly, even if you do craniofacial, it is fine. Orbit removal is not a big issue. It is the orbital apex, because even if you remove the orbital apex, the disease may continue through the optic nerve. So the posterior and posterior superior extension are the critical one.
Including pterygoid muscles?
Medial pterygoids is fine. It is the high pterygoid involvement where greater wing of sphenoid comes into picture. Even if you clear there, what happens to trigeminal nerve and foramina rotundum and all those things may have taken the disease up into the brain.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, ma'am.
Okay.
Dr. Vinay, you would like to add something?
Good afternoon, sir. It was very good presentation. but I had a few doubts. How do you handle, cases if there for T4B cases, wherein you would like to give a neoadjuvant chemotherapy and then proceed? Does it change your outcome? Does your management change? How do you go about such cases?
Sir, too extensive diseases are difficult to handle, however good we are. So you give neoadjuvant and see for the result. If they shrink like anything, then they are amenable. But most of the time, upfront, whatever is inoperable is usually inoperable in the neoadjuvant setting also.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Sorry, ma'am. You're saying?
So thank you, Mr. Chavan, Dr. Chavan. Very difficult topic. I think you have dealt with today. The malignancies are complex, as you said. Both anatomy is, it's not very favorable, and the histology is varied. In such a situation, to think about the cosmesis is not something that we usually do upfront. But I think you have opened our eye to it, and we are also happy with all the reconstructive options that I think you have shown us, and that was very comprehensively dealt with. Thank you very much, Dr. Chavan, and over to Dr. Mubina and Dr.
Harsh.
Soumyaji. Yes.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much for your interesting talk. We also would like to wholeheartedly thank Dr. Suja ma'am and Dr. Vinay Rao sir for moderating today's session. And we have put the feedback link in the chat box. That will be mandatory for getting the e-certificate. So please kindly fill in the feedback form. And we shall meet next week, next Saturday for the talk. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Chavan sir, on my behalf and Vice Chancellor's behalf. Sir couldn't attend today because he told me that he will be probably in OT today. Probably he's in Abhaya or Sagar. If I'm
Okay.
So he told me to convey his regards to you. So probably we'll meet again sometime in future, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir, for the opportunity. And I tried to be a bit brief. The idea was to give a orientation to the general residents rather than each thing can be discussed hours when it comes to
In
reconstruction.
fact, days, not just hours. Maxilla is such a complex topic as Dr. Suja put it. It's not, management is also difficult and even talking is also difficult.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
Dr. Suja and Dr. Vinay on behalf of university.
Yeah.
We will meet again next week. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.